All right, thank you very much. Hello, Finovate. I'd like to introduce you to Fideo Intelligence. My name is Chris Harrison. I'm the CEO of Fideo. I'm joined by my lovely CTO, Ken Michie. He's going to show you Fideo Verify. It's one simple API that unlocks hundreds of fraud checks across 8 different attack vectors for one just low fee, unlimited checks per user. It does this by using Fideo's AI to do knockout fraud before more expensive step-up fraud checks. And I'm not going to waste a lot of time in introduction. In fact, the time it's taken me to say this, there's been over 10,000 different fraud attacks. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken, and he's actually going to show you how this works. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Chris. So yeah, just to kind of kick things off, what you're looking at here is an application that we've developed to help highlight the power of the Verify product. And so today throughout our demo, we're going to simulate going through a bank onboarding experience with this simple mobile app. And we'll click through, and it'll be populating some fields over here on the left. And then as we go through it, we'll get to see how the risk profile stacks up after every progressive step that we iterate through. And so, as Chris had just mentioned, we've got 8 different packages that we're going to be checking against. Everything from breached identity that comes from the dark web, all the way down to synthetic identities. And we heard about synthetics. So why don't we get things started? And we'll just start with our first character. Her name is Maria. Now, Maria Trustwell has a very low-risk profile, and any bank would love to have her go through the process, and she'd be able to open an account without any issue. But unfortunately, Maria's identity was just breached on the dark web. And a person by the name of Ivan Darkov, who's a Russian hacker, has taken notice. And Ivan today is going to use parts of Maria's information to try and create a synthetic identity. And we'll see how Verify helps stop him in his tracks. So I'll go ahead and clear the results out here. And we'll start with the very first touch point that Ivan has with the bank. So Ivan is on the site. And the very first touch point we have is an IP address. Now, IP addresses are not necessarily the perfect place for identification, but they're a good signal as to where they're originating from. And so right off the bat, we get to see that this is a high-risk IP address that's coming in. And why? Well, let's take a look. So Fideo's response tells us that this is a high-risk IP, and fraudsters are known to be using data proxies and VPNs, and in this case, a Tor exit node. Now, Tor is notorious for coming from the dark web. And honestly, anyone coming off the dark web is probably not up to anything good if they're trying to open up a bank account. So normally, we would say, as the bank would say, hey, this is too high of a risk. We're going to knock this out right away, ask them to come into the branch and proceed. But it's a demo, and we're going to actually see Verify in action and see how high we can drive this score. So the very next stage that comes up is Ivan is prompted to ask or to enter his mobile number and his name. Well, obviously, he's not going to put in Ivan. He's going to use Maria. So he'll put in Maria Trustwell, but then he's going to put in a different phone that's actually not Maria's phone. So let's go ahead and see what Verify says now. So if we come down, we can see that the risk score was elevated again. And the reason why? Well, 2 different things. One being that the phone number was recently seen in Fideo's system within the last month, a little suspicious. But perhaps more importantly, the phone is actually detected as being a voice over IP type. And that makes it a lot harder to verify and more prone to being disposable. So we'll continue along the way. Again, the bank would normally have aborted, but we'll keep going. And so Ivan used that phone because it was a Google Voice phone that he could then receive that SMS message. So he gets the code, puts it in, blah, blah. On to the next. Then we're asking Ivan to provide his email. Well, this time, it's a little more interesting because it looks like Maria's real email, but notice that. It's got a 1 at the end. Now, fraudsters are notorious for trying to hide in the noise and make it look real, but it's actually something that he controls, and it's not Maria's. So taking a look at that, we can see now that the profile has increased, the risk score has increased even higher. And there's a couple things going on, but I'll focus on the first thing, which is because Ivan had just created that email, it's never been seen in Fideo's system. There's no digital footprint. There's no history that we can attribute to that email. Very suspicious. Now, finally comes to the last step. And so we're asking Ivan to provide the rest of the information, which is the address and date of birth. Now, this is where Ivan actually puts in Maria's real information. So he's got her address, he's got her birthday, and he provides that. But as you'll notice, it's a mix now of Maria and so a few other identifiers that Ivan controls, which is exactly the definition of a synthetic identity. And so it looks like we've got up to a 98% risk score, which is really high. And if we look a little bit closer, we can actually see that Fideo was able to detect that the email is pointing to a different person. And if I can scroll, the phone is also tied to a different person. So Fideo was able to capture that right off the bat. Now, let's take a closer look at this response. So everything I showed you today was calling our API real time. And in that response, you've got a risk score that is coming back. That'll go from 0 to 100 effectively. And then we got all the check results. So if you are a sophisticated customer and you want to do your own risk profile, that's no problem. We give you all the results that we're using to derive that risk score. Also, if you want to key off a very specific thing, such as, hey, this email is not deliverable, that's great. There's a code in here that you can key off of. So all of this is being provided real time, every call, and as Chris had mentioned at the beginning, all in one session. So even though we called this multiple times throughout this demo, this is only one billable event at a low cost to you. That helps you improve your margins and detect fraud right off the bat.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just finish up by saying we are Fideo, simple but very powerful. Come see us at our booth. Try us for free. We'll catch fraud early. We'll save you on your fraud spend. Thank you very much. Have a great day.